Today was the day, the opening of a new chapter in the history of Victorian football, round one in the first AFL season. And Andrew Anderson was in the crowd at Waverley for the big match.
March is when the dedicated footy fans wake from summer hibernation, dust off their scarves and jumpers, grab the thermos and head for the stand.
I understand it's your birthday. Have you got a birthday wish today?
Only the Geelong Thrashers Hawthorne.
The long football break has been hard for Hawthorne supporters, dreaming what this year will bring.
It's good to have it back and looking forward to another 22 rounds of great football.
Sort of a case of ho-hum Hawthorne, another season, another premiership.
On the turf, Hawthorne showed off its premiership flag, then what thousands of people had come to see. The league has changed its name, but everything else continues.
So round one has begun in the first AFL season. For today's highlights, we cross to Dixie Marshall on the sports desk.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. There were some big scores kicked in the opening round, with reigning Premier Hawthorne kicking the sweep against Geelong. Essendon was also deadly in front of goal against Fitzroy. Melbourne was far too good for North, while Sydney produced a storming finish to pip Carlton. But it's Hawthorne which is the talk of the town after a magnificent second half in the grand final replay. At half-time, the margin was only 17 points, but an hour later it had ballooned to 115, with Dunstall kicking 12 to equal the record for the most goals in an opening round. Hawthorne fans have been waiting 6 months for this, the unfurling of the premiership flag, and Geelong fans have been waiting the same time for this, the Gary Ablett show. He was the dominant player of the opening term and in tandem with Billy Brownless pushed the Cats 2 goals clear at the first change. Out of that though, Jason Dunstall had warmed up, and whether he was 1-on-1 or 3-on-1, he was winning out. That allowed the Hawks to peg back, then bounce past Geelong. Obviously, Dermy had a score to settle with Mark Yates from last year's grand final. More memories too for the Cats as they hit the main break, 17 points down. Geelong brought it back square early in the third, but that merely pricked the Premier's pride and they went on a rampage. The Hawks kicked 9 goals into the wind. Morrissey via Dunstall had a hand in 2 of the best. The Cats collapsed. Dunstall ran riot. In an ominous start to the new season, he finished with an even dozen. And Essendon continued its great pre-season form by thrashing Fitzroy by 81 points at Windy Hill. The Bombers started brilliantly and never gave the depleted Lions a look in. Essendon's best performer in front of goal was Werner, who kicked 5. At the MCG, Melbourne gave co-tenants North Melbourne a football lesson, with former West Coast Eagle Darren Bennett a star in front of goal. The Demons, who have always had trouble kicking big scores, received great service from Bennett, who booted 8 goals, 6 of them in the first half. Sydney chalked up its first win against Carlton at Princes Park for a quarter of a century when it staged a remarkable fight back to win a thriller. The Blues were in control for the first half but kicked only 4 goals after half-time, while the Swans piled on 12 to get up in the last minute. Drew Morfitt reports.
Having not beaten Carlton for premiership points at Princes Park in 25 years, the Swans had history against them. And despite the best efforts of Greg Williams early on, there was nothing to suggest history would be made today. The Blues were to edge ahead through Dorotich and Steve Kernahan.
But early, I love it, just couldn't quite get his foot to this one. Watch this. No, missed the first time. We've got to give up. Now, Bennett was a big plus for Melbourne yesterday. He kicked 8 goals. It's one of the things that the Demons have been lacking. He's a sharpshooter up forward, a man that they can fire.
And they obviously have worked very hard on the tackling aspect of their game, and they've continually put pressure on North and didn't allow North to get any system flowing at all, and their smaller players and young players found it very hard to cope with and appeared to be a little frustrated, particularly late in the game. But also, of course, as expected, it all started in the centre, where unfortunately for North they went into the game without their most promising ruckman in Hepburn. He didn't take his place in the side. That allowed O'Dwyer and Stein to completely dominate that area, opened the gate for their rovers and running players. Clark in particular looks a great asset for the Melbourne side if he can continue in that vein. Lovett took over the pivot position and showed polish there. He's very much in the Greg Williams mould, very creative. Tingay off the bench onto the wing was a good contributor. Newport and Wilson, they all relished in the opportunities given to the big player or by the big players. Their back line was tight, where Yates, Tingay and Stretch were dominant. And of course the icing on the cake was up forward with Bennett kicking 8.
Who would have North missed the most, Hepburn or Martin?
Well, that's a hard one. I think Martin obviously adds a lot of stability into that back line. He's mean, as we all know, and he would have been missed. But I think Hepburn at least has shown a great deal of promise in the ruck, and really that's where, to my way of thinking, they really gained the first use of the ball. So I'd have to say Hepburn, for the number of times he would have been in the play.
Kel, a lot of new faces at Melbourne, Clark, Spencer, Obst. How did they go?
Most of them performed very well. I've already mentioned Clark as a rover, a big asset for them if he can continue. He continually broke up the play with his great pace, delivered the ball well. Obst was very impressive also. He certainly knows what it's about. Not much of him. Certainly has a go. Spencer, I'm not completely convinced with him as yet, but certainly a handy player. So really, they're getting good value. Well, they got good value yesterday from all their good players. Votes yesterday, as I mentioned, Stephen Phoebe was outstanding across the half-back line. 3 votes. Darren Bennett, great exhibition of marking and long kicking for goal, and he got 2. And Brett Lovett, a polished display in the centre, 1.
Kelvin Moore reporting there. As you'd expect, Melbourne players 1, 2 and 3. Bob Davis went to Windy Hill. Bob, did they yell out?
Grand final replay at all, was it?
Well, after half-time, Geelong went home. They were just cruising along. They were there with a bit of a chance. Ablett was playing well, and all of a sudden, Hawthorne, who hadn't really had a kick for about 5 weeks and hadn't won a game, just turned on, let them out of their cages, and away they went, 19 goals to 1. Unbelievable. But I couldn't believe what Alan Jeans had the turnaround, because they didn't look like they were the side. There's Ablett there taking a mark. He didn't even pay to get in on, so they jumped the fence, like right over the top. But way there is Billy Brownless, and they were looking good in the first half, Geelong, but Dunstall ended up, he kicked 12 goals, Jason Dunstall, and there he is, his next Queenslander. Platten's in the grandstand. He wasn't playing, but it was a pretty tough game, and the bloke who cleaned up Brereton last year picked him up, Mark Yates, and they're having a bit of a scrap, and young Stephen Hocking, but there was a lot of feeling. But after half-time, she was a one-horse race. It was unbelievable. There's Jamie Morrison kicking a goal, and everybody was saying that Hawthorne were gone and finished. Well, they just proved to everybody, and I wasn't one of them, thank God, that they're back in town again, and they're looking for 3 in a row.
Crackers, they're calling it the Australian Football League. It really is. This over the weekend, you got all the out-of-town teams winning, which was great for people who follow the Swans and the Eagles and the Bears. Tell us about the Swans game. I mean, Carlton 45 points in front. Did they think it was going to finish early, that one?
Well, yeah, they sort of must have gone home halfway through the third quarter. But there's young Shane Fell playing his first game for the Swans, an ex-Geelong player, second player, got it out to Williams, and Williams kicked a goal. Probably the best footballer in Australia, Williams. He played on Rhys Jones, and last time they met up in the Sydney Cricket Ground, it was a real big fight, but he cleaned out Rhys Jones, was best on the ground. But, they were doing it so easy, Carlton. They were just cruising down the ground, kicking a goal. There's DeRuy kicking a goal, and everything was so happy. The lunch and munches, the Blue Tails at Carlton. But all of a sudden, the little Sydney Swans decided it wasn't over, and they just pegged them back. Fitness, I don't know how Jez has got these blokes looking at Carlton, but they weren't that fit. And that's where the Swans were terribly fit. The Swans are going to be a good side this year. The people in Sydney should get behind them. If they don't get injuries, there's Keenan taking a mark there, and it was a good standard game, but they didn't win. And well, that's a bit of a problem.
Emotion rebuilt the Footscray club, but emotion doesn't necessarily win football games.
Oh, I went out there yesterday. 28,000 of us turned up there, and they had the dog out on the ground, Scragger, and all of a sudden they started the game, and Tony Lockett ran out. I reckon he's about 130 Ks, but he kicked 10 goals, and it was, look at this remark, he was pushing it aside. How would you like him to fall on you, Gibbo? He'd kill you. But he's an absolute champion, and they're a very good side. There's a young Grant having his first kick in league football. Not too bad. He comes from Dalesford, played all right, but Footscray got a long way to go. There's Lockett. He only kicked 10 for the day, and I don't reckon he got out of first gear.
Now, the Brisbane Bears, Crackers, have they come good at last? 59 points winner.
They Feedigan got stuck into it, and there's one bloke up in an alleged kicking charge, but that wouldn't be true. I know the man. So it'll be an interesting couple of days. But Collingwood...